The Putin generation is losing its faith in Putin? In recent years, the youth, especially the students in large numbers, have voiced their troubles. Student activism is rapidly rising, showing others that education is much more than schools and textbooks. Students are now actively taking part in events that have or focus on creating social, political, environmental, or economic reforms in the country. They mostly focus their activism on curriculum, schools, and educational funding, but they have repeatedly shown that they can change whatever they stand for. Last year, in July and August, in a similar set of protests against the government in Russia, a huge chunk of the protesters was a youth. They were protesting the government's refusal to register independent candidates in the Moscow City Duma elections. This came as a surprise for many because for the first time voters in this election, 18-year-olds, Putin was always the president. We know them as the Putin generation. Hence to see them protest against Putin by making up a huge section of the protesters was a surprise. This is a sign that civic awareness in Russia is growing. While Putin has largely avoided talking about the demonstrations, his press secretary has said that the Russian protests were not a political crisis. Protesters have said that even with approximately 60,000 people showing up, Putin and his government have ignored it. Until recently, considered politically apathetic Russian youth, supportive of the regime and disinclined to take part in public actions. Generation Z or people who were born and grew up during the presidency of Vladimir Putin have become a particular interest to political scientists. This generation loudly announced itself in the 2017 anti-corruption protests. The uninterested youth are slowly being active in politics again. They are making their voices heard and show their governments the power they, as people, hold. In India, students have shown up in huge support to protests of the Anti-Ca and NRC. Students all over the country have even protested in solidarity of the attacks on their Jamia University and Jawaharlal Nehru University counterparts. They are not afraid to speak out against injustice. And the government cannot stop them any longer.